But let's start with that Washington SC game because I think everybody saw a couple things out of this one. One, the result, which was Alex Grinch getting let go after hanging 52, did Washington on USC. And in the last two games, giving up 100-plus points, I believe, something at least close to it. I'd have to double-check what the score was the week before. But they've given up a lot of points. And I think I saw that in the last 6 games, they've given up either more or just about as many points as Iowa has in the last 2 seasons combined. So that USC defense is definitely – it's the point that everybody's been looking at. And, again, you're going up against one of the best offenses in the country. The second thing I think everybody saw from this game was – and Matt just gave us the exact total, 49 last week, 52 this week. So over 100 the last 2 weeks combined. Not ideal defensively. The other thing everyone saw was Caleb Williams and his reaction after the game and just how emotional he was. He played well, and he generally does. The only game he really hasn't played to his standard, it feels like, was that Notre Dame game. Right. Every other game, he may have had not quite the gaudy numbers, but he's played like Caleb Williams, and he put his team in position to succeed. It's just another good win for Washington, and that offense continues to hum, and they're pushing just each week, getting closer to that college football playoff.
Yeah, it's interesting because Washington's offense, after the win against Oregon a few weeks ago, for the next few weeks, their offense was not really hitting on all cylinders. Well, the perfect remedy was to play USC defense, and they exploded 572 yards and 52 points. And I think everybody tuned into that game expecting a major shootout between Caleb Williams and Michael Penix Jr., and they both played well. Penix Jr. threw for 256 and 2 touchdowns. But the real difference in the game was Washington's ability to run the football. They had 316 yards rushing against the Trojan defense. Dylan Johnson, who wasn't even the starting tailback when the season began, they lost their number 1 tailback to an injury before the year even started. He had 26 carries, 256 yards and 4 touchdowns. So a very impressive offensive game for Washington. Look, I hate when coaches get fired. Alex Grinch is a good dude. He's a good football coach, but he just never could get it done. He couldn't get it done with Lincoln in Oklahoma, and they just weren't able to, even with more talent available at USC on that side of the ball, able to get it done there. And I will say this, being a defensive coordinator for Lincoln Riley with the offense that they have and the way they play offense is not an easy job. And so whoever goes in there next will understand that, it's an air raid team that is in the shotgun all the time, and their running game, they like to run the football, but it's a finesse running game more than it is a power running game. And you don't get to practice certain things or certain ways against some things you're going to see from other teams in that you play. And that's going to be true, when they come into the Big Ten. You think about USC coming into the Big Ten. They're going to see people that are going to line up with 2 tight ends and pound the football. Well, when you have that kind of an offense that USC has, you can't get a scout team necessarily. Even if you go ones-on-ones, you're not going to get the same look or the same feel of that kind of power football. So, it'll be interesting to see who Lincoln Riley brings in next. There's been a lot of names, being bounced around. One that I find the most intriguing right now is Jim Leonhard, who, was the former Wisconsin defensive coordinator who is not coaching this year, but he's on Illinois staff as kind of an analyst. He doesn't work on game day, but he works during the week. And if he's itching to get back in the saddle as a defensive coordinator, that could be a very interesting arrangement there as USC gets ready to come into the Big Ten.
So that's a fascinating point because I don't think anybody, myself included, thinks about having to practice against an air raid style that Lincoln runs. And to your point, he wants to run the football, but not the same way of what they're going to see. That's completely interesting. And Jim Leonhard would be the reason that I think Jim would be so good for them is because his identity, his personality, what he was as a player is what they need. They need that toughness, right? They need somebody who is the fundamental perfection. That's what Jim Leonhard thrived on over the course of his college and then long NFL career was he wasn't going to miss tackles. He was going to make sure he was in the right spot every time. And against the run, he was sniffing it out from the safety spot as well as anybody. So that'll be an interesting search for them moving forward. They've given up. Yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, you know what it's going to be like. It's very similar to, remember. Of course, we have them again this week, but the last time we had Ohio State and the conversation we had with Jim Knowles, they talked
Yeah.
about having to convince the defensive players that, hey, look, let's not concede competition to this offense. We know they're a great offense. We know they're explosive. We know their wide receivers are great. But go out there and compete every day in practice, and let's believe that we are good enough to win games on the defensive side of the ball. Now they're doing that this year. I mean, Ohio State's defense has been consistently outstanding from game one till now. So the offense has had some ups and downs. They've had some injuries. But the defense has really carried the day for Ohio State. And part of that is just a mindset that, look, just because we have an explosive offense doesn't mean we can't have a dominant defense. And they've got that right now. And that's what USC ultimately should have because of their resources, their recruiting base, their ability to attract talent. They should be able to have a dominant defense to go with Lincoln Riley's offense.
Yeah, and they've got a rich history of great backers and defensive backs. And I mean, not to mention guys who are just entering the league now. Tui Pelotu had like 4 sacks last night on Monday Night Football and continues to do great things for the Los Angeles Chargers. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting. USC has given up 40 or more points, 5 of their last 6 games. So we'll see what the final rest of the season looks like for them.